There are moments in life that look small from the outside. A careless laugh, a passing gesture, a sentence thrown into the air without weight. But sometimes those moments are like stones dropped into deep water. The surface barely moves, yet below, everything shifts. The evening Alexander Voronov bought the useless horse, he believed he was simply entertaining himself. The auction hall smelled of polished leather and money. Crystal lights reflected against glossy floors. Men in tailored suits whispered numbers that equaled years of ordinary people as labor. Horses were presented like luxury cars. Lineage recited, muscles praised, victories highlighted. Alexander was bored. Success changes how the world looks at you. Failure changes how you look at yourself. But redemption changes how you look at the world. After the village victory, attention grew faster than anyone expected. Regional organizers called. Sponsors offered small contracts. Journalists arrived with cameras and rehearsed questions about miracles and second chances. Alexander watched it unfold with complicated emotions. For years he had controlled narratives. Media about him was curated, polished, strategic. Now the spotlight won steal on his empire. It was on a homeless man and a horse he had publicly dismissed, and the public loved it. At first Alexander's instinct was to manage it. Hire PR, shape the story, align it with his brand. But something inside him resisted. For once, he did want to control the outcome. He wanted to understand it. He began spending more time at the stables, not as owner, but as observer. He noticed things he had never seen before. The way horses reacted differently to tension in a human's body. The way Nadezhda relaxed when Ilya's breathing slowed. The subtle communication without words. Power, Alexander realized, had always been his language. But here, power meant nothing. Presence meant everything. One evening a larger competition invitation arrived, a regional championship with real prize money and professional competitors. This was different. The track would be tougher. The horses faster. The expectations heavier. When Ilya read the invitation, he did not smile. He looked concerned. Does he owe anyone proof? He said quietly. Alexander leaned against the stall door. Are you afraid she'll lose? He asked. Ilya shook his head. I am afraid she'll be pushed. The difference unsettled Alexander. In business, pushing was standard. Necessary, even admired. But watching Nadezhda now, healthy, strong, yet still bearing invisible history, he understood the risk. Fame attracts pressure, and pressure reveals character. They decided to enter on one condition. If at any point Nadezhda showed strain beyond healthy effort, they would withdraw. No matter the money, no matter the audience, Alexander agreed without hesitation. That decision surprised even him. Training intensified, but differently than before. No brutality, no ego, just discipline. Alexander began waking early to watch sessions. The sunrise over the fields felt different from city skylines. Slower, honest. One morning as mist hovered over the grass, Ilya handed him the lead rope. Walk her, he said. Alexander hesitated. I am not trained. Neither were you once. Ilya replied calmly. The rope felt foreign in his hand. Nadezhda turned her head slightly, assessing him. For a moment he feared she sensed his past arrogance. He stepped forward. She did not resist. Each step felt strangely grounding. Alexander, who had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without trembling, felt nervous guiding a horse across damp grass. Because this required something he had rarely practiced, trust without dominance. The regional championship day arrived with overwhelming energy, grandstands packed, professional commentators, sponsors, banners. Alexander's name appeared on entry lists as owner. That detail bothered him. He approached Ilya before the race. After today, he said, we transfer official ownership to you. Ilya studied him carefully. That's not necessary. It is, Alexander answered, and he meant it, not as charity. As correction. The starting line buzzed with tension. These were not village competitors. Muscles gleamed. Jockeys focused like sharpened blades. When the signal fired, the race exploded into motion. Nadezhda held strong early. But halfway through the second lap, the pace intensified aggressively. One rival horse cut dangerously close. Alexander felt his chest tighten. From the stands, he could see what others could, the slight stiffness returning in her stride. Ilya felt it instantly. Without hesitation, he pulled back. He slowed her. The crowd gasped. They were in second place. They could still push. They could still fight for victory. But Ilya chose restraint. They finished third, respectable, but not triumphant. The applause was polite, not explosive. Commentators questioned strategy. Some critics online later wrote, they played it safe. Alexander felt something rise inside him, anger at the lost opportunity. Then he saw Ilya dismount. He pressed his forehead against Nadezhda's. "She's more important," he whispered. In that moment, Alexander understood something profound. Winning at any cost had defined his life. But this was strength beyond ambition. This was choosing integrity over applause. And it was harder. Back at the stable that night, there was no celebration, just quiet care. Alexander signed transfer papers the next morning. Officially, Nadezhda no longer belonged to him. Strangely, he felt lighter. Ownership had once meant control. Now it felt like responsibility. And responsibility, when misused, corrupts. Weeks passed. The rehabilitation center began expanding with deliberate intention. Not a flashy brand project, not a luxury facility. A real sanctuary. Animals discarded by competitive systems arrived thin, anxious, reactive. Alexander funded construction anonymously at first, but word eventually spread. Investors questioned his shift in priorities. Board members warned about emotional distractions. One even said bluntly, "You are becoming sentimental." Alexander responded calmly, "I am becoming aware." The difference cost him partnerships. It gained him clarity. Then came the crisis. Late one evening, a storm rolled across the region violently. Lightning struck near the stable. A section of the older structure caught fire. Panic erupted. Horses kicked against stalls. Workers scrambled. Alexander, who had been on site reviewing plans, did not retreat to safety. He ran toward the smoke. Adrenaline stripped status away. He and Ilya moved stall to stall, releasing animals, guiding them through chaos. At one point, debris fell near Nadezhda's enclosure. Alexander reached her first. She reared in fear. He did not command. He spoke, voice steady despite the flames. "It's all right." The words felt unfamiliar on his tongue, but she responded. Together they led her out. Firefighters arrived quickly, containing the blaze before it spread fully. No lives were lost, but the damage was significant. As smoke cleared under early dawnlight, Alexander stood covered in ash, breathing heavily. Ilya approached him. "You could have stayed back," he said quietly. Alexander shook his head. "I did want to." And for the first time in his life, that answer came without calculation. Rebuilding took months, but something had permanently shifted. Alexander no longer measured success purely in expansion graphs or market dominance. He began restructuring his company culture, implementing ethical oversight in competitive animal industries, funding rehabilitation programs, advocating humane standards. Critics called it a rebranding strategy. Those who knew him closely knew better. It was not image correction, it was internal correction. Years later, when Nadezhda grew older and retired fully from competition, a small ceremony was held at the sanctuary. Not extravagant, just sincere. Children who had written letters were invited. Some of them had grown up. One young woman approached Ilya and said, "Your story kept me from giving up." Alexander stood in the background listening. He did not step forward for recognition. He no longer needed to. As the sun set over the open fields, Nadezhda grazed peacefully. Ilya sat beside her. Alexander joined him quietly. "You once said something," Alexander began, "that uselessness isn't real, only lack of belief." Ilya nodded. "You believed in her," Alexander continued. Ilya corrected gently. "She believed in herself. I just did stand in the way." Alexander let that settle. For decades he had stood in the way of others, of softness or humility. Now he finally understood. The most powerful transformation is not turning nothing into something. It is turning arrogance into awareness. Years from now, business magazines would still list Alexander Voronov among the country's most influential figures. But when asked privately about his greatest investment, he always answered the same. "A horse I once called useless." Because that horse did not just win races. She revealed the poverty inside wealth, and she taught a powerful man that redemption is not bought, it is chosen. Alexander's relationship with his past and father had shaped every corner of his psyche. He had acquired 2 prime stallions that night. His assistant, talent in hand, stood ready to transfer sums capable of building schools. For Alexander, it was not about the animals. It was about presence, influence, proof. Then they brought her out. She did not walk like the others. Her coat lacked shine. A faint unevenness marked her step. The announcer's voice lost enthusiasm as he listed her failed competitions and past injury. There was no pride in the description, only obligation. Silence followed. No one lifted a paddle. Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her, not with compassion, with amusement. A failed product displayed in a room built for excellence. How much? He asked casually. The starting price was almost insulting. A few scattered chuckles echoed when he raised his number. The gavel struck. Sold. It felt like purchasing a broken ornament. He did not think of her again until the truck rolled through the gates of his private estate. His property stretched wide beyond the city. Manicured grounds, modern stables, surveillance cameras, polished fences. Everything under control. Everything maintained. Except life itself never truly obeys control. At the outer fence stood Ilya. He had been appearing there for months. Thin, weathered, always quiet. Some employees mocked him. Some pitied him. Alexander barely noticed him until that evening. The timing amused him. The symbolism amused him. He stepped out of his car, expensive shoes pressing into gravel. "You like horses?" he asked lightly. Ilya looked toward the trailer being opened. His eyes did not reflect hunger. They reflected curiosity. "I respect them," he answered. Alexander smirked. "Good. Then I have a gift for you." Workers paused. The mare was led down carefully. She hesitated. Her leg trembled slightly. "She is useless." Alexander said loudly for all to hear. "No victories, no value, but maybe she'll suit you." A ripple of restrained laughter passed through the air. It was subtle humiliation, polished, disguised as generosity. Ilya did not react the way Alexander expected. He stepped forward slowly, extended his hand. The mare flinched at first, then stilled. His palm rested against her face. Silence deepened.
"Thank you," he said.
No sarcasm, no shame. "I'll call her Nadezhda." Hope. The word hung in the cold evening like something fragile. Alexander felt something strange. Irritation? Disappointment? He had expected discomfort. Instead, he saw quiet dignity. He waved dismissively. "Do whatever you want. Just keep her out of my way." He walked inside, convinced the moment was over. But it had only begun. That night, the temperature dropped sharply. Frost gathered along the fences. Through the wide glass window of his office, Alexander could see the stable lights still on. Ilya had not left. He had laid old blankets near the stall. He spoke in low tones. Not dramatic speeches. Simple things. Observations. Encouragement. Alexander told himself he did not care. Yet he watched. Over the next days, Ilya returned every morning before sunrise. He cleaned the mare carefully. He inspected her leg with surprising knowledge. Later, Alexander learned that before life collapsed around him, Ilya had grown up in the countryside. He had worked with animals in his youth. Pain recognized his patience. The mare, Nadezhda, responded slowly. At first, she barely lifted her head. She ate little. Her eyes carried the flat emptiness of something long dismissed. Ilya did not push. He sat beside her stall reading aloud from an old book. History, poetry. Sometimes he simply described the sky. Days became weeks. Alexander noticed small changes he pretended not to notice. Her posture straightened. Her coat grew healthier. She began to follow Ilya with her gaze. One morning, as Alexander walked past the stable toward his car, he saw Nadezhda step without visible limp. It was brief, but undeniable. He paused. For the first time, doubt flickered. Had he misjudged? He shook the thought away. He had meetings worth millions. Contracts, expansions. Yet that evening he returned earlier than usual. Ilya was leading Nadezhda gently across the field. No saddle, no pressure. Just walking. "You think she'll run again?" Alexander asked, unable to hide skepticism. Ilya considered carefully. "I think she wants to," he replied. "That's more important. Want." Alexander had not thought about wanting in years. He thought about achieving. Winning. Owning. Wanting felt vulnerable. Spring arrived gradually, softening the earth. The local village announced its annual rural competition. Modest races, small crowds, no grand prizes. The workers joked that Ilya should enter. He did not laugh. He approached Alexander one afternoon. "May I register her?" he asked. Alexander studied him. There was no desperation in his voice, only quiet resolve. "If she fails, it will be embarrassing," Alexander said bluntly. "For whom?" Ilya asked. The question unsettled him. After a long pause, Alexander shrugged. "Do what you want." The day of the race carried the smell of grass and sun. Children ran between stands. Music played from cheap speakers. Farmers stood proudly beside well-built horses. Nadezhda looked smaller beside them. Whispers circled. "That is the one from Voronov estate?" The lame one? Alexander arrived discreetly, sunglasses shielding his expression. He told himself he was there out of curiosity, nothing more. The starting signal cracked through the air. The horses surged forward. Nadezhda lagged at first. Alexander felt vindicated, then something shifted. Her stride lengthened, her breathing steadied. She did not explode forward recklessly. She accelerated gradually, as if remembering an old rhythm buried deep within muscle and memory. Halfway through, she passed one competitor, then another. The crowd's noise changed from amusement to surprise. Ilya leaned low, not forcing her, simply aligned with her movement. The final stretch felt suspended in time. Alexander's heart pounded, though he did not understand why. Nadezhda crossed first. Silence. Then eruption. Applause. Shouts. Disbelief. Ilya slid down, wrapping his arms around her neck. He was shaking, not from adrenaline but from emotion held too long. Alexander did not clap. He stood frozen. For the first time in years, something inside him cracked, not loudly, but definitively. He had brought her to mock worthlessness. She had answered with triumph, and not just athletic triumph, moral triumph, over him. That night, Alexander could not sleep. He stood at his window overlooking the darkened fields. Memory surfaced, childhood nights when he had felt insignificant, when teachers doubted him, when relatives dismissed him. He had sworn never to be small again. But somewhere along the climb upward, he had begun pushing others down to secure his height. The realization tasted bitter. The next morning, headlines spread online. Formally rejected mayor wins against all odds. Photos of Ilya and Nadezhda circulated widely. Journalists called. Investors joked about your miracle horse. But Alexander did not feel pride. He felt exposed. He drove to the stable before anyone else arrived. Ilya was brushing Nadezhda in soft morning light. I was wrong, Alexander said quietly. No audience, no performance, just truth. Ilya looked at him, studying the shift in his posture. Yes, he said gently, you were. No accusation, just acknowledgement. It was more disarming than anger. Alexander swallowed. I'd like to help. Properly. Ilya's eyes narrowed slightly, cautious, not resentful. Help her, he said. Not your image. That sentence struck deeper than any business negotiation ever had. And for the first time, Alexander understood something unsettling. The most difficult investment in life is not money. It is humility.